Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Leslie Ann Asmus. And in this recording session, I'm basically going to launch or give you enough information about this course that we're going to be doing in January to get you started and get you listening to some of the recording sessions so that as we meet and we have guest speakers, we go through project work, some workshop with SPSS, the IBM statistics software. You'll have had at least a preview of the material. Now, again, I sent a message out indicating that, I highly recommend you go through all the recordings. That is about 8 hours worth of watching and listening. Take a high-level glance at it, a big picture. Don't worry about the weeds. Don't worry about whether you get every detail and you understand the concepts, because we're going to go through a lot of problems when we're meeting. But I did want to go ahead and give you an overview of the course at this point so that you know kind of the grading policy, general format of how it'll be run. So let me go ahead and get started with that. If my computer would wake up, that would be good. There we go. Okay, so who am I? Dr. Leslie Ann Asmus. I'm going to go ahead and give you the EMIS department office number with Tammy Sherwood. She's going to be there throughout the break and the beginning part of January. So if you need to get in touch with me, you'd like to talk by phone, certainly happy to talk with you over the break. But leave her a message and she'll get in touch with me. Otherwise, emails. I have a lot less email traffic during the break, as you probably do as well. But I do still get all the, airline drive closed and basketball parking and all that stuff that clogs up the email. So if I don't get in touch with you within 48 hours, please do give Tammy a call. And I'll be looking for emails in case you have any questions or anything you need to get in touch with me about. So why am I teaching this class? What's some background that might be relevant to it? This is a whole laundry list of stuff I've done. So yeah, indeed, I have a PhD, a master's and a PhD. It is in operations research, and operations research is a field of study. It's for, I would say, people that like math but don't necessarily want to go and prove theorems for their whole careers. So I've actually, as you see here, I was out in corporate for a long time with consulting and building mathematical models, strategic level, everything from portfolio management and how should you build your portfolio with stocks and bonds and mutual funds and that kind of stuff, to the spectrum of inside a semiconductor factory, how do they schedule parts being made on the 100 different or 400 or 1,000 different steps they need to within that. So, and in that, you can imagine that there's two folds on it. One is to take the deterministic view, where you just say, okay, a yield number is a yield number. There's no change in that yield number. If I tell you it's 98% yield to make this part on this machine, then you got to believe it. That's how it always is, every day, every month, every so forth. But realistically, our world doesn't work like that. There's probabilistic aspects of just about any piece of data that you have. And so, kind of understanding that and working in that environment and building things around it is what I think, no matter what your field of study, in engineering, in the sciences, anything you're doing is going to think about, historically, people have talked about probability and statistics. But nowadays, we're at a point where there's just mounds and mounds of data. And so how do you get information out of that data? How do you use it in your studies, in your research focus, or in your work focus of understanding what's going on? So we'll slant that. So long, blah, blah, blah. So nowadays, I'm into the OR, operations research, as I've always been, and also into the analytics. So some people call it advanced analytics, some people call it data analytics, but underneath the covers, you'll see some classic probability and statistics. So that's a bit about me. Additionally, some of the clients I've worked with I didn't list everything I've done, but these are a few. Retailers, consumer goods, packaged goods, into the high-tech industry, working a lot. I lived out in San Jose for quite a number of years doing solely the high-tech projects, but also with petrochemical. And, you know, again, I didn't mention the others in DuPont and some of these kind of companies. So range of different experience that I hope adds value to the discussions and you know, the teaching this to you. So course description, I highlighted in blue, okay, because again, I come from a practitioner's point of view. I'm somebody who's spent a lot of time applying, and so I think the value that you can, you know, what I can give to you, I hope, and what you leave with is certainly the foundation. You need to have the basic concepts. You need to have the theoretical. But I hope you leave this course with a strong understanding of how it fits into the world and the application of it, the relevance of it. Big thing I'll comment, you'll hear me say it throughout the course. You'll probably get nauseated at how many times I say it, but don't get lost in the weeds. And, you know, again, I remember being probably like you are. I even had a thinner book when I first started into this field. But as you see your book, it's a reasonable book, especially if you've taken some math and science books and stuff. But with any field of study, you start out at the basic level. And as you go on studying more and more, it just piles on top of each other. So we're going to be doing that. You start out with some building blocks, and then we're going to add some more complexity, more complexity. Big thing is keep the big picture, what's going on. And again, in this world of data, big data, how does it tie in to what we're able to do today in terms of probability and statistical analysis versus what we might have been able to do 50 years ago when we didn't have these supercomputers, we didn't have sensors that could collect data like we do. We didn't have mobility in our technology to move it around with iPhones or iPads or this kind of stuff and work with it in that way. Or GPS, think about UPS, you know, how they're working with their data. Okay. So, you know, I don't know if you caught it on the previous slide there. We do have a couple of kids. They're in 2nd and 3rd grade. So I always find it interesting and fun, actually, to find out, you know, that in school, and you probably went through this too. I probably went through it. I don't remember anymore. But, you know, they work with pie graphs, pie charts. So basically, you know, if you look at this, what was the probability you attended a game where the Mavericks won versus lost in 2010 and 2011 season? And so a kindergartner could look at that and go, well, I probably would go to a game that won, right? So, you know, you start out at a very early age learning about probability. They don't necessarily call it probability, but they call it, you know, so this is just looking at numbers, teaching some basic mathematical concepts. 1st grade, you get into histograms, saying, okay, let's look at the history. So you see another level. It's not just one comparison of over the entire season. You start to think about time-phased data, time-phased information, 1st grade, you know, looking at the trends. So you don't necessarily learn this stuff in the context of what is probability and statistics, but indeed our kids, and you probably went through it, it's not new stuff. I mean, people have been looking at charts like this forever. And so what we're going to do this semester, or not this semester, but this January, for these brief 8 days, is blast through a bit more of this. Put it in the context of more, again, that's the Mavs focus, so keeping with the Mavs, think about this stuff with regard to sports analytics. And so the sophistication, and of course, you know, you got computers, got data, got court side or field side or whatever you are as a coach, got the behind the scenes people involved in making decisions for these different mega $1 million contracts and you know, big industry basically in the entire sports arena. So given the last 5 years of Mavs history, what's the likelihood of a winning season of back-to-back? That's, you know, that's kind of flat. But now you take it and you say, how did the ratio of wins and losses change with the trade of a particular or a group of players? Now this is what's getting into more of the analysis, of course. Have you seen Moneyball? And I would highly recommend you go check that out. But that, you know, it gives you that sense of how can you use probability and statistics to make better decisions. And of course, the sports arena, they're trying to figure that out just like everybody else is. Medical community, science community, engineering environments, same thing. You're dealing with mounds of data, and how can you how can you make better decisions with it? Doing an analysis. So how did the ratio of wins and losses change with a trade of a group of players or just one player, getting a new coach, getting a new group of assistant coaches? How does all that impact? What's the correlation? What's the relationship between those changes and a winning season? And of course, the big thing that everybody's talking about, as you can imagine, right? It's scenario based. So if you're talking about the baseball arena, you're talking about, if you're a team that has big hitters, as in Moneyball, do you want to get on base? Do you want big hitters are going to hit home runs? What kind of pitching staff do you have? You got scenarios there that come to play. And then the other thing is trying to figure out the human factor.